Hey there, welcome to episode 89 of the FFS Talk audio program. I am your host, Dan Hugo. We're recording this at 5:40 p.m. on Thursday, August 7th, 2025. Yes, later in the day than normal. This whole week has been shifted around. Should I apologize? You can listen to this whenever you like. The topic of today's program and the title, in fact, explainers. Let me explain. If you're not familiar with the FFS Talk audio program, it is a program designed to promote conversation and discussion, maybe even debate about particular topics. We could explore what works, what does not, and what we might do about it. Of course, all of these are subject to the opinions of the participants. Thus far, it has been one participant, and you are listening to him right now. But ideally, one of these days, we'll get in there. The thought at this time is that if and when we do commence actual conversations with others on either some of the topics presented thus far or something new, that we can conduct those as video interviews. And we would post the video, it would be virtual, most likely for convenience. The video could be posted on our new YouTube presence, and the audio would make its way to audio channels. So in other words, there's no real reason to jump into this episode format if someone has an opportunity to create or to participate in the creation of a conversational episode. We can have a completely different set of threads around those sorts of things. Now, this leads me into the fact that we now have FFS Talk Audio publishing not only on Apple iTunes, and I think it was already on Amazon Music. I think it's on iHeartRadio, and also now a YouTube channel, youtube.com/@FFS Talk. So these will appear on the buymeacoffee.com/Dan Hugo profile page, but I'll get there in a second. In the meantime, if you are not familiar with the FFS Talk audio program, as I've described it, I will end this introduction with a reminder to those who do know and maybe those who don't, that FFS is an expression I've stolen from some Irish friends and associates. If you are not familiar with what FFS means, you should hang out with more Irish people. Hopefully, wherever you found this audio program, you're able to locate the episode description, which contains the show notes, including a brief summary, which I'll read to you, and the links for today's episode, which are exactly the same as the links for all the episodes. No, I haven't added any extra episode links. I think I've actually started talking about reaction videos and whatnot. I need to figure out how I can talk about my favorite content creators in some context. I don't believe the FFS Talk program is that. I didn't want to provide just a couple of links because there's really a lot of links, and I know you're not going to go watching other YouTubers and whatnot. So I got to figure out a way to do this. To present these things, a blog or a blog roll or equivalent, or playlists, or I don't know. We'll figure something out. But so I'm not really going to dive into specific cases here. Some of the things that I mentioned may bring to mind some cases. Maybe the things that come to mind for you will be different than the things that come to mind for me or someone else. So we can keep it vague for the moment. In all likelihood, you will say, yes, I know. I've heard that, or I've seen that happen. So on that note, let us begin so we can end. The summary of today's episode: explainers are a real thing on YouTube especially, but on any video media. Well-produced explanations about how things work from people who might know what they're talking about. They're usually video, usually with some reasonable production value, although not required. They may just be one person speaking into a camera and a microphone, and they have plenty of cool things to say. I do have a couple of content creators along those lines. Others have cuts and inserts and production and lighting and all kinds of fun stuff. So it varies wildly. It's, as always, the content, what someone has to say, and maybe the way they say it, and maybe even who they are that matter, not the shiny stuff. That just holds your attention more. The links for today's episode, as usual, the buymeacoffee.com/Dan Hugo profile page is my anchor onto which I publish my links for my various audio programs. And as I mentioned, we now have YouTube links for everything but one. So those, I didn't update them yesterday. I was supposed to. I'll update them today. So all the links for Innovate for Vegas, Quaggling Sand, FFS Talk, Cafe Genius Impresarios, and also Buy Me an Update and Coffee Solo are all on YouTube and iTunes and Amazon Music and other places. Hopefully more coming. So you can go to buymeacoffee.com/DanHugo for not only links to the Spotify for Creators profile pages with links to various sources, including Spotify, which I forgot to mention, but also the YouTube links and then anything else that comes along. And there will be homepages for all these as well. The to-do list is maybe is stabilized at too long, but not getting longer just yet. Longer. The Buy Me an Update audio program it used to be exclusively available on the buymeacoffee.com/DanHugo/posts, part of that website. But it now, as I've mentioned, has a YouTube channel and a presence on Spotify for Creators. So it's on a few of the usual places and hopefully more coming soon. But Buy Me an Update is a 5-minute or less brief rundown, a microcast of the previous week's audio program topics, and then any news and announcements upcoming. It's 5 minutes. Check it out. Finally, Coffee Solo, ko-fi.com. That's kofi.com/DanHugo/posts. I don't really use the other page resources, the account features. So the audio posts that I make for the Coffee Solo program are also, of course, not exclusive to Kofi.com anymore. You can find them on YouTube and those other places. But if you are interested in where it gets posted first, Coffee Solo has no particular publishing schedule, no set duration, no set topic or topic constraints. Could be anything. You are not obligated in any way to spend money at either Buy Me a Coffee or Kofi.com. You can if you like. Any proceeds do go towards coffee and coffee equipment, which is how all this continues to move forward. Now on with the show. To start, I will introduce my own context. In a world where the attention economy demands views and likes, and so content creators must always be making content to get that attention dollar, it is good to know that some of these creators apply what they know, what they really know, to informing their audience. I personally enjoy many explainers along those lines. I am using the term explainers in a generic sense here. Sometimes these are science communicators or other similar titles. I don't know if it's really a formal credential. I don't know if they put it on their resume, but they probably do. These are people who create content around explanation of some topic, event, theory, fact, and so on, about which they know quite a bit. Usually, hopefully. Some of these explainer creators put substantial effort and creativity into their works, and this will typically escalate as success and popularity leads to revenue, which can lead to more investment in upcoming creations. You may find, and this is probably typical, you may find a professor, PhD, a doctorate, or an expert in some field. It could be, any number of people. It's not PhD, not required, but people who really know what they're talking about, who want to provide information to people or answer questions or whatever their preferred format is. They start off small. They get a following. They can monetize their efforts. They can pay a video editor. They can produce more snazzy content. They can do more illustrations and more complicated productions that are more appealing, but also which can be very practical, right? You can be describing something as a voiceover with an illustration of a process, so there is actual value there. So I think that's interesting, and I'm intrigued by this corner of the internet. So there's always the question of credibility, though. Explainers come in many forms. We live among an embarrassment of riches when it comes to tools and platforms and audience to express opinions to. Hey, I'm doing that right now, in fact. Am I qualified to do this? Maybe. I don't know. Probably. Maybe. Maybe not. I don't know. Most people are qualified to express their opinions, of course. But we can run into trouble if someone expressing an opinion is giving the impression, perhaps trading on an existing reputation of their expertise in this other topic. So that they're giving an opinion, not an expert opinion. I can tell you all. Well, I'm going to give an example later. I'm going to give it right now. I know a lot about computer engineering from my 30 years on top of my academic background before that. That does not mean I know anything about virology, for example. So I can talk about virology. I don't know why anyone would want to do that, but as a normal person, maybe I've read the study, not just the abstract, but I'm not a virologist, so I can give my opinion as a layperson. Some people, by the way, will try the dodger. I know the language of science, and that's useful to a degree. If you understand how to read research papers, how to account for data inconsistencies, the proper reporting of error bars, the showing of equations, or modeling data, descriptions of your study subjects, right? So you have certain expectations that you're familiar with. You may not take everything as though it were true. So a certain amount of professional skepticism may be built into that. But generally speaking, again, I am not a virologist. So if I talk about lab leak theories or whatever, which I will not be doing today, I don't know what I'm talking about. If you want to talk about my views on computer architectures, computer system architecture, you want to talk about educating up-and-coming programmers, that kind of stuff, I've been around that stuff for a long time. Now, there are many explainers out there going above and beyond, acting in good faith as communicators of their expertise. They are credentialed, they are reasonably good or even great at explaining a particular facet of their expertise to a wide-ranging audience. And if they are making money doing it, so much the better. Some stay in their lane explicitly or are clear when they do choose to express an opinion. This is just my opinion. This is not really in my field of study or expertise. Possibly responding to a question. I've seen that many times. I've seen it only twice that there's been an explicit pushback. Oftentimes they'll answer, but with less certainty perhaps. But that their answer is from a layperson or someone not expert in that particular field. I'll refer to the two people I have in mind. There should be more, but I can only think of two people who have literally said, I don't answer questions outside of my field of expertise because people might think that I know what I'm talking about. But I know what I'm talking about in this area, not that area. Then there are those who assume the role of explainers, but who are more interested in sensational debunking. It's almost like a sport, whether they are really debunking anything or not. Promoting fringe, or these are fringe attitudes on things, conspiracy theories and so on. Or generally attacking ideas and people for the sake of views. Again, sport and money. I would suggest that this may represent the other end of a credibility spectrum. Not that anyone who engages in these more sensational methods to engage their audience is not credible, but I would wonder if they are. Like, why are they doing this? That's one of those critical thinking questions to ask. Why is this person doing these things? So let's talk about that spectrum. It'll sound repetitive a little bit, but I just want to dial in on this. It is important to understand that, from whom we are getting information, which sometimes takes the form of or might be interpreted as advice. You will often hear, for legal purposes, people saying, what I am telling you is not financial advice, etc. That can be applied to a lot of different things, not just financial conversation. What is not always crystal clear, especially for those jumping into a single episode on YouTube or catching a recommended short video on YouTube or TikTok or Instagram or maybe elsewhere. I don't know exactly what they're, where they're coming from. So some people are not explicit about stating these up front every time. They just assume over time, I have an audience, they know, but a newcomer may not. Maybe this is just a research scientist, a medical clinician. Maybe this is an expert in manufacturing or survival. The list goes on. It could be anything. And the person you are watching might be an authority on something. That'd be nice. Things can get a little weird when someone who might be an expert in something is talking about something else. So this is not staying in their lane. This can happen quite easily in the context of an interview where the expert is a guest, or some expert are a guest or guests on a video podcast, for example. I'm not going to name any in particular, but a news program, that could be anything. You get 3 minutes to share your knowledge in a specific context, which may not be appropriate, or wherever else where they are asked for an opinion outside of their specific area of expertise, perhaps to speculate. And then what? This bears repeating because it happens all the time. Not most of the time, all of the time. It is noteworthy when someone pushes back and suggests the question is not within their purview. I can think of two in particular. One is a physicist and one is a historian doing this. One was recent and the other one was maybe, 2 years ago. It's not very common that I come across this. I should have many more examples, and surely there are many more examples, but maybe not enough. Somewhere on this spectrum as well, the explainer who is more performative than informative, a lot of production value to keep short attention spans fed, is what they are explaining within their expertise, one might wonder? Yes, you should. Are they taking a quick glance at some abstracts and putting on the lab coat for another episode? I've seen a few of these. They tend to drive me away, especially when they are jumping onto a trending topic. Often in a physics-related subject. Physics is really getting popular lately, but not in the best way. Physics-related subject area, but not always. And these can sometimes lead into passive-aggressive attack mode, which again, physics is full of angry people, I guess, which to me is entirely counterproductive. I don't really care for this, the attacks and whatnot. These are all on the darker end of the spectrum, in my opinion. Now, explainer videos, keep it simple, explainer content, it does work, mostly, sort of. What is my phone telling me? Weather. It's hot. Heat warning here in Vegas. Surely there's somebody explaining that on the internet right now. I think it's Brian Keating. So this is one of the few names I'm going to mention, but I did want to point out that there has been at least one person among several, but I think it's Dr. Keating at UCSD, University of California, San Diego, astrophysics, I think, who has made a point of I think he's a experimental physicist, if I remember correctly, who has made a point of suggesting that people in a science field, but I will add on I'll add on any intellectual field and then extend that to a little bit further to anyone who really knows something at an expert level. So not just scientists, but maybe without formal credentials, even they just share knowledge, real knowledge they really have with anyone who is curious and at scale, right? They're putting themselves out there. But Keating says anyone who has this level of knowledge and expertise should put themselves out there, should be willing to take at least a little bit of time to share with others. I believe he says it's a responsibility of a professor, for example, at a school that receives public funding, the UC system, an example. He says, that we're being paid by the people. We should share what we know with the people. That should be built into the job description. I can agree with that. But a lecture is interesting. A lecture recorded and posted for broad consumption and for posterity is something much more, I think. Not only are people learning about a topic, but they are also interacting with a person, passively, a parasocial relationship perhaps, but they're at least witnessing that an actual human who is actually immersed in that topic is sharing what they know with them, with the audience. The people who are the reason we continue to learn and know more, we could say. They're the people you're looking at on YouTube or your favorite media platform right now. Possibly. There is an occasional format wherein a panel of explainers will get together. This is more common in a pure science field, but it could happen. And this enables some in-person or maybe virtually in-person interaction, some debate, which could possibly elevate the discussions. This is the opposite of the sniping that can take place in social media platform environments where reaction videos claiming to debunk or correct or generally respond to the content of another person can feel like watching people you don't really know arguing, which is kind of what it is. The plot is lost at this point, but the viewing continues. These are the times we live in. What are you going to do? That is, I think, when this sort of content can kind of break down, when they begin speaking to each other instead of their audience, and when they begin attacking each other or bickering, passive aggressive for the win. Now, there is a gray area in there where someone with particular knowledge will respond to another's presentation with specific details, corrections. Maybe we can call those notes. Some of these are good-natured and rather professional. I've seen one, I think it was one, something Veritasium, and I'll let you look that up if you want, but this person published something about electricity and current flow. Some other people in the field of electronics and physics, a physics-related field in engineering or similar, chimed in with some reasonably well-produced video responses. They were interesting. It was actually interesting to see kind of an asynchronous conversation. And these are nice if they provide specific references and citations, corrected assertions, and so on. It is not always clear that the original content creator is contacted ahead of time. Like, I kind of think it would be interesting to invite that person in to discuss the notes or to have them be a part of the response, right? So that they can respond, or that it can be more of a conversation instead of this he said, she said, he said sort of thing. But again, the world we live in. But if the correct information bubbles up to the top, there is some value here. Communication and collaboration around the correction might make this more valuable. And again, it can happen. It sometimes does, but not often. But I think it would be the most value would be to have the original content creator and then someone who has legitimate notes. Maybe, hey, here's what I think you did wrong. You want to come on my episode and we can talk about my findings and you can respond. And then sometimes they can post it to both channels. I think there's a lot of good methods that can be employed to attack or to avoid attacking, but to tackle these sorts of disagreements, or maybe, oh, I didn't notice that error, or oh, thanks for catching that kind of thing. I think everybody wins in that scenario. And so I will suggest that having a discussion about the corrections or notes connects two or more people who care enough to do this stuff, and it actually kind of the whole is greater than the sum of the parts, right? And it connects them to the right information for their audience members so that everybody ends up a little bit ahead. But these things also do not work. There is no more formative time connecting online content creators and an attentive population than the pandemic. Before the pandemic, we had YouTube and whatnot. During the pandemic, everybody was on YouTube. Everybody's watching YouTube. Any theories are bubbling up on YouTube and TikTok and Instagram Reels and all that. But boy, howdy, YouTube became a thing. If it wasn't a thing before, it most definitely was. So from 2020 to 2022 or so, where so many people became YouTubers and TikTokers and podcasters and whatnot, everybody was sitting at home watching, trying to figure out what's going on. Here we saw some medical experts, research scientists, clinicians, virologists, public health officials, epidemiologists, data scientists, and many others of subject matter expertise, possessing that, if I can speak properly, creating their own content in some cases, discussing with peers. There's a couple of really good programs by real professionals that I came to like watching during that time, and they're experts in their field, subject matter experts to say the least. And they would have real discussions, not arguing about current findings and so on. And joining more established content creators in an interview discussion format or similar. The thing that was really interesting, if I can interrupt myself, during that time was that as new details came about, some people will say, well, the virus was mutating, but also indeed, there was just a lot being learned about how it was transmitting, how it was reproducing, how it was able to breach a cell with the spikes and all this stuff. So as more and more information was learned, there was more and more information to share. And some people took that to mean, oh, that story is changing. But, if you're paying attention to qualified explainers, they can walk you through, here's what we knew last week, here's what we know this week, and this is how it changed, this is why, and, we'll know more next week and the week after. Remember that spectrum, though, so the doors were opened for anyone with an opinion that sounded reasonable, or maybe even if it didn't. Like, we just need guests. We need people to talk about things so we can still get more attention economy and we can get our dollar. When the more popular content creators can do what is now known as platforming, when they can platform an expert and also a non-expert, there is an opportunity to establish some sort of equivalence and credibility between the two or more of these guests across days or weeks or months. So a really well-established and credentialed and knowledgeable and experienced and the current, like staying on top of the latest cutting-edge research and what's being found in the case of this pandemic. When that person is on, and then the next day someone is on who knows nothing about what they're talking about, but they have a similar conversation, to the regularly participating audience member hearing both of these, they kind of sound the same. They sound like they both know what they're talking about. Non-experts are often pushing a controversial, even conspiratorial theory. They may not exercise a classic, they may exercise a classic Mott and Bailey strategy to defend their notions if pressed. And in the end, this scintillating theory might get more attention, more interest, and more exposure than the real notions put forth by the actual expert who knows what's going on. Mott and Bailey is a debating tactic or a way to defend a bad idea and make it sound like a good one. Motte and Bailey, Bailey, if you want to check those out. It's together. It's Mott and Bailey. The Mott and Bailey fallacy, for example. So you would have people defending a broken notion by presenting something that's a little bit easier to consume. Like, oh, okay, yeah, I guess they're right about that other thing. And so that must make them right about the big, ugly, nasty, that's got to be untrue thing. And we were seeing a lot of that. And it's unfortunate because the truth and value of science and scientific pursuit were called into question, and they continue to be today, which is unfortunate. This episode is leaning more into science than it probably should because I don't always consume science content on the internet. Sometimes it's widely varied in general. The ease with which anyone can become a content creator, establish an audience, monetize that audience through various means, and gain notoriety by collaborating with other content creators can present something of a halo effect for anyone with a point of view, regardless of how plausible their assertions actually are. The halo effect is when people just assume, oh, you must know what you're talking about because you were on that podcast, or you know that person, or you have a really good production. I like the presentation. I don't know what you're talking about, but I'm going to assume you do. So the halo effect is often a false assignment of credibility where there may not be so much credibility deserved. This extends well beyond the topic of mRNA vaccines and origin stories in labs or what do you call it? Markets, wet markets. Everybody knew what a wet market was. And whatnot, though they can have lasting impacts which come back later. But the same thing is going to happen outside of science and all that. I'm just using this as an example I think we all have some recollection of, and it does get worse. Now, not only can any one person or group of people form a convincing mis or disinformation effort and publish it in so many ways for the world to consume, they don't even know. No, they don't even need. They don't even know. I can't even read my own notes. They don't even need to be real people, and nobody needs to really write so much anymore. Just tell your favorite generative AI tools. Artificial intelligence, in particular generative AI or Gen AI, can turn a rather simplistic prompt into audio and maybe even some convincing video to go with it, so that a completely disinterested algorithm might engage in any manner of convincing AI slop. If I can make a passive-aggressive dig myself, the right prompt might lead to a confident AI presentation that convinces its audience that 1 × 1 = 2. It is difficult for a person to do this, but people are buying AI more and more. As attention spans shorten and as the likelihood that anyone might dig deeper into any particular topic to find out if what they just saw or heard makes sense. So in other words, do your own research. And they might ask ChatGPT at this point, but where does that lead? We may find that a flashy presentation wow, I used WRITE instead of RIGs. Let me correct that right here. Oops, if I could type. Okay, I had 2 typos in there. A flashy presentation with the right computer voice actor can convince a population of anything.
My current voice is
oh my God.
Upbeat. Would you like to change it?
How do you like that for no? Stop.
Well, that's one
Stop.
way to say no.
Stop.
I'm still here if you need me, though.
No. Speaking of AI.
All right, I'll leave you to it.
See, it doesn't know when to shut up. Alexa Plus, not a great product. No, I don't want that either. Okay. Anyway, I'm guessing it's going to continue to interrupt because it's not that smart. But that's the problem. These are disinterested algorithms. They're just going to spit out whatever, and people will check against their own version of a chat client. I could ask one of these stupid devices to confirm something about mRNA viruses, vaccines, I should say, and how they're used against viruses, RNA viruses. They'll just spit up stuff they found on the internet that I could go find myself. So that is the world we live in. Tide Pods might be nothing by comparison when we really get into this. So what next? What next? The example I always give, and I've been leaning towards academic experts here, but for anyone claiming knowledge and expertise enough to explain, basically to teach others, there should be some demonstrable expertise, and if not academic credentials, a portfolio of accomplishment, maybe some references. I usually start off by saying, if you go to a doctor's office, you're going to expect to see diplomas, right? You're going to see some sort of credentials. So that's sort of the first thing. In science fields, this is often citation counts and other research papers and other papers. So references, this is a referral, right? I'm referring you to the research of this other knowledgeable person who is a part of the work I've done. Often expertise is expressed as an anecdotal mention without any background information. So they'll just say, oh, this person invented mRNA vaccines, or this person invented the PCR. But they don't tell you anything else about anything, right? So sometimes the devil is in the details, as they say. If you visit a medical professional, you might expect to see a diploma or two on the wall in the office. Sounds familiar? So the equivalent CV, curriculum vitae, story of one's life is not too much to ask for. Resume is typically if you're looking for a job, but a CV is more about who you are, your life experiences, and how you became an expert in something, a list of publications and references and so on, all that stuff. So who am I listening to on this internet thing? Just somebody who got the job? We're going to see more and more Gen AI content. We're going to hear it. We're going to see it. We're going to deal with it, especially if it can be monetized, which means anything that might be vaguely interesting to anyone will get AI slop poured over it. Clear declarations of authorship, which YouTube is attempting but not always successfully from what I've seen so far, will be essential. Credentials, transparency, and if we really must have Gen AI content on our menu, the source prompt or context and the tools used with versions. Did you use ChatGPT? Did you use, Cursor? Did you use Gemini? Did you use any number, right? And there will only be more. So how did you arrive at this? And just like a diploma, right? I went to this college and I worked at these places on my resume. Well, this was built using these tools, these versions, the prompt, here's the recipe, so that you could actually figure out whether this is credible or not. That's a start anyway. It's a start. Show the work, I say. Show the work. Now, not all AI is bad. It may be that a person with real knowledge to share, but maybe not able to create detailed video content of a reasonable quality to get the attention their presentation actually deserves. If I can provide one last example by name, 3 blue, 1 brown, that's Grant Sanderson, YouTube creator, a former Khan Academy instructor, if I recall correctly. Grant Sanderson created himself software tools to generate animated plots and other visualizations to go along with his mathematics explanations. So he's explaining his math. He's a mathematics explainer, and he's using 3D charting and moving points and lines on grids and so on to illustrate the way the mathematical equations work, the way the relations interact, etc. Not everyone can do this. Some people are just not programmers. That's okay. You're fine. So I myself would be all for using generative AI tools to augment rather than supplant the presentation of expertise. So I want to see, I can't write my own code to create the graphs and so on, the charts and the plots, but I can provide a context that an artificial intelligence tool will create these things for me to illustrate what I'm trying to explain. And I'll provide that information so someone else might be able to recreate that and maybe learn a little bit more from it. Using AI tools to generate animated mechanical illustrations of blood cells, heart muscles, subatomic particles, agriculture, insects, ecosystems, and the possibilities likely go on forever. That's fine. That's about using the tools, not being replaced by them. Don't you want to know a human being is doing this stuff for your sake so that you learn? That's kind of nice. So those are the things I think will hopefully make what we have better and not worse. I'm a little bit concerned that things are going to take a turn for the worse for a while. But for me, I learned a ton when I was very young by watching Sesame Street, The Electric Company, and various other educational programming on PBS or elsewhere. Does anybody remember Zoom and Nova? I myself am a big fan of this form of information sharing for the purposes of education. We can all stand to learn a bit more. And now we have so many ways to do it, and from so many places and so many people, and unfortunately so many non-people. I am, though, troubled by the slapdash fashion by which much of the content of the modern era is created, sometimes with an agenda to spread anti-information or launch a passive-aggressive attack on someone. I'm not speaking of the really good content creators who really do care. Those people are doing fine work. It's just that they might get, I'm really concerned that the great productions will be lost in the noise, and worst, one of those, replaced by bad information. If somebody can tell a really good story, but it's a story that is completely wrong, people will love that really good story. Fiction for the win. That's not a good thing. I consider myself a critical thinker with many interests and enough intellectual curiosity to delve deeper into novel ideas and presentations of unfamiliar information. I can only hope I am in a very large crowd. And that is today's topic. I really do enjoy. And again, I will do an episode or something. I will try to delve more into some of the content creators that I find to be truly exceptional, interesting. They present really interesting ideas and perspectives. They actually do research for their presentation. Sometimes they're on topic of their expertise. Sometimes they're adjacent, but still relevant. Other times they're sort of anecdotal, and it's just a little bit of a human story about someone who is an expert in this thing, but does normal human things also. So these are the sorts of things I think are really interesting. I always say, this is the reason YouTube exists, right? Not for the slop, not for the attack videos, not for people copying and creating their own versions of my work or your work, right? That's not as great. But to have people willing to put themselves out there with what they know, to share with others, maybe educate someone, maybe inspire someone to enter their field or a related field, or to think, hey, I'm interested in something as much as that person is interested in something. It's something else entirely, but now I can see what pursuing your real interest can lead to. So I think the value is really high, but the risks are also really high. And I think they only get higher, the risks, as we get more and more people either creating slop with our ever-improving tools, or pursuing this with an attitude that they must somehow take out their opponent as if it's a battle, when ultimately I think the better and more correct ideas should win, not the person who's able to yell the loudest and so on. So we'll see how this goes. I'd love to know what your thoughts are, and maybe we'll create a video discussion between the two or more of us, and we can see if any of these ideas are good, or maybe there are better ones. So we'll see where things go. Don't forget to check out buymeacoffee.com/DanHugo for where to find the YouTube links and other stuff. My voice is now officially checked out, and so will I. Thank you for listening. Take care.